Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed your meal. Before we commence the second half of the workshop, we shall start by hearing from individuals who are pillars of the society. They are contributing to making urban living more dignified for persons with disabilities. To commemorate the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, we have collected a series of messages from successful persons who have reached the heights of success and are examples for us all. May I request the video message to be played, please?
I grew up with a disability. I have a visual condition which makes it difficult for me to see properly, to navigate or to drive a vehicle. And so growing up, I have always found myself depending on others for my mobility needs, which was an incredibly constraining experience, especially in the formative years.
In like many NGOs, UN, it's very difficult to have a conversation with that peoples. It's very difficult to have conversation with them. I used to pay a lot of money to interpreters. If people don't earn a lot, I used to pay heavy amount to interpreters for the conversation.
But a lot of people with disability are not able to take this step, not because they can't be independent, just because they are scared of the challenges they will be facing or the difficulties they have to face.
And with regards to my experience of living as a disabled person as such has been extremely challenging and complex, and it's kind of difficult to articulate that. However, I would want to highlight that more than our disabled bodies, it is the environment that we're living in that makes us feel more disabled, and that needs to change.
Hello everyone, my name is Akush Kulkarni. I head Accessibility and Inclusion at the Ola Mobility Institute. We are a new age think tank, creating knowledge frameworks at the intersection of mobility, innovation, and public good. Grew up with a disability. I have a visual condition which makes it difficult for me to see properly, to navigate or to drive a vehicle. And so growing up, I have always found myself depending on others for my mobility needs, which was an incredibly constraining experience, especially in the formative years. Later in life, as I grew up and gathered new experiences, I was able to see how transport systems could be incredibly different in different parts of the world. I have worked across 3 continents in various capacities, right from technology to public policy to business, and have had the good fortune of also studying abroad for my MBA at Stanford University. All of these experiences really opened my mind and heart. When I saw the transport systems out in the West, which were really empowering and which could enable you to travel independently for yourself, I reflected on my own life.
Sorry for the interruption. Since Secretary Sir is running really short on time, I would just get into the inaugural session. I would like to invite our esteemed guests of honor, Shri Durga Shankar Mishra Ji, Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri Ved Prakash Ji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri Hitesh Vaidya, Director, NIUA, Professor Gaurav Raheja from IIT Roorkee, and Professor Shubhrato Chattopadhyay from IIT Kharagpur. I also invite Mr. Utsav Chaudhary, Team Leader, Basic Program, to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Mayura. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the National Workshop on Mainstreaming Disability Inclusion to Transform Urban Futures. I'm delighted to see such an august gathering of people here today a day which reflects our nation's and institutions' commitments to making the lives of persons with disability more equitable and improving their quality of life. I extend my gratitude to all our eminent guests present here today, along with the Secretary, our Joint Secretary Sir, Director Sir, and both the professors from IIT Roorkee and Kharagpur. Without taking too much time, the main event of the day is the launch of the harmonized guidelines and a complementary set of reports and guidelines that the BASIIC team and the NIUA team has prepared. So I will sincerely hope and welcome you all today so that we can take this commitment forward in making our cities more inclusive and creating interventions that make cities more livable and more habitable for persons with disabilities. Again, I would like to thank you all, and thank you to the dignitaries for taking the time out, and especially to Secretary Sir for taking time out from your busy schedule and joining us today, sir. Thank you so much.
So we'll straight away get into the launch of harmonized guidelines and standards for universal
Recording in
accessibility.
So we'll have a quick presentation.
May I request Professor Gaurav Raheja from IIT Roorkee to make a short presentation, which would be a prelude to the much-awaited launch of the harmonized guidelines. The guidelines have adopted a change in the approach and the very philosophy in working towards mainstreaming universal access and inclusion in cities. Professor, please.
Presentation on? Yeah.
You know?
Switch it on there. Is it too late?
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I'm online and I can't hear anything going on in the room. I think the microphone is muted. Apologies.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege, honor, and a great matter of pride that in our own country, for our own country, we have today gathered here in the presence of Honorable Secretary Sir, Mr. Durga Shankar Mishra Sir, JS Sir, Mr. Ved Prakash Ji, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya Ji, NIUA, and Professor Subroto Chattopadhyay and my colleague Hemanti, that today we are at this moment of precursor to the launch, and therefore we have titled this very quick and crisp presentation to give you a glimpse of what has gone in, what is coming through, and where our country perhaps can look into a future. Before I start making my few words, I must first of all truly compliment with the core of my heart that the inspiration that we've got from the government, from the topmost leadership, then from Honorable Secretary Sir, intense discussions, reviews, wherein a lot of threadbare discussions happened, participatory consultations with Prakash Sir, with constant support that we have received from CPWD, NIUA, their teams, Mr. Bose, Ms. Dipali, Kanika, Utsav, and 4 members of my own team who are invisible here. I would like to place their names on record here: Aishwarya, Isha, Shreya, Shetty, Barsha Amrendra and Shreya Shukla, without whom this journey I wouldn't have been able to take. So what you see here is not me, it's everyone behind, and it's the nation. So it's a journey, friends. Harmonized Guidelines 21, as you see, within the same legacy of past 5 to 7 years, we had 2016 RPWD Act. 2016, we had the Harmonized Guidelines first one, which was a very big milestone. And from there, what has now in front of you is what shows the story of that transformation, not change. The story change only is that what was highlighted in one way as a focused approach to people with disabilities has now perhaps opened its doors by widening it and saying it's to be more inclusive. The cover page that you see here is a glimpse of India, the pluralism of India, the diversity of India. The curves that you see here are not straight because they want that people can be of any type, and they represent 9 disabilities, 9 typologies, and even more to talk about this. It tries to debunk the myth of transforming the practice, about bringing universal design to a contextualized story of India. We have reviewed a variety of guidelines across the world, but we still believe there is much more that we could achieve. But this is a stepping stone, and I hope we will receive your encouragement and support, not only to review and take it forward, but also to practice it as a holistic approach, and that's what these guidelines try to bring in. It brings in the guiding approach with 3 strong perspectives. One is it focuses, constantly uses the word universal design instead of barrier-free. Second, it supports a lot with visuals. Third, it tries to make it more readable by making it more visual and text balancing approach. It follows a slightly complex methodology. Everything was achieved during a COVID time with constant support from the government and the constant push as well. But we've tried to reach out to every sector and everyone. I'm sure there must be some who would have still remained unanswered, but I'm sure the story is not ending here. It's open because we believe the idea of guidelines is a progressive one. These were the public consultations that were done, documented. This is the India that was represented. This is how the sections came through together. And it went through a certain scientific process of taking reviews. Friends, it's about all. It's about all of us. It's about all of them. It's about all in one word, right? And it stands on 3 pillars: accessibility on infrastructure, accessibility of information, accessibility of services. Together they form a built environment. This is how the chapters look like, color-coded with the same 9 colors, and you see how they transcend. Specifically, the 1 and 2 introduce you to the subject. 3 and 4 talk to you the core of elements. 15 and 15, 30 elements, external and internal. 5 and 6 talk about signage, and 6 building typologies. A very interesting chapter, I would say a new addition, is the chapter 7, which talks about accessibility on building operations and maintenance. And the 8th is about steps to evaluate what we have achieved. It focuses that stakeholders for accessibility is not one person, it's not one architect, it's everyone in a structured manner, and therefore stakeholder consultations shall always be part of it. Accessibility as a process. It's not design and finish. It's design, procurement, regulatory sanctions, site implementation, constant evaluation, and monitoring and management. Then accessibility becomes a continuum. It centers itself on 5 pillars, very strong pillars, I believe. Human-centric, universally accessible, equity and inclusive, safety, and participatory. And it perhaps tries to bring India on the international map that we have our own context to represent. Therefore, I hope you will find these guidelines putting something from the Indian side as well, which talks about the Indian attires, which talks about the Indian perspectives, but we believe at the end of all business, universal accessibility benefits all. Friends, it's not a day to exclude people with disabilities. It's not a day to exclude women, not a day to exclude transgender, but to celebrate the plurality of India, because we believe the India was always inclusive in spirit. Yes, in infrastructure, we are taking steps, technology, we are taking steps, but it does need constant support from all of us together. Take it forward, and to sum it up in the quote of Gandhi, it is a very small milestone, but it's very, very significant. In Gandhiji's words, almost anything that you do may be insignificant, but it's still important that you do that bit. And on that note, I thank you all for joining us for this session.
Thank you, Professor Raheja, for highlighting the key aspects in the reworked harmonized guidelines. These guidelines are the brainchild of our Honorable Secretary, Shri Durga Shankar Mishra ji, and it was because of his immense guidance and support that we can launch these guidelines today, which aim to transform the urban landscape on principles of inclusion and universal access. May I now request all the guests on the dais to unveil the guidelines and Secretary Sir to kindly lead the way. We are extremely grateful to Professor Gaurav Raheja from IIT Roorkee, our partner in change and the principal investigator in this activity for the thorough revision process. We appreciate the efforts of officials of the Central Public Works Department.
The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs is pleased to unveil the updated version of the Harmonized Guidelines and Standard of Universal Accessibility in India 2021. The BASIIC program at the NIUA in collaboration with
We are also pleased to launch yet another transformational document, the Inclusive City Framework, prepared in collaboration with IIT Kharagpur. Inclusive City Framework reinforces the need for a robust methodology that is required to address several physical, psychological, social, economic, and institutional barriers in the way of inclusion of the vulnerable groups into city development. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors. May I request you to kindly enlighten the gathering with your visionary thoughts and experience of working towards 2 landmark documents for universal accessibility.
Sri Hitesh Vaidya, Director of National Institute of Urban Affairs, Professor Raheja from IIT Roorkee, Professor Chattopadhyay from IIT Kharagpur, my colleague in the ministry, Sri Ved Prakash ji, colleagues from my ministry and NIUA, which is extended arm of my ministry, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great privilege to release 2 important works which has taken hours and hours of experts, stakeholders, ministry, NIUA, and the 2 different IITs. I come from a different IIT, the 3rd IIT, but the 2 different IITs, the same fraternity. I convey my compliments to all those who have been involved with doing this work. In fact, I had opportunity to go through the whole thing. In few exercises, we went through the whole thing, spent hours in my ministry and seeing and making it sure that these guidelines are real world standard guidelines and they address the issue of universal accessibility. The ministry had earlier notified a guidelines for accessibility, and that was in the year 2016. It was harmonized guidelines and the space standards for barrier-free movement of people with disabled ability, different ability, as well as the elderly persons. And that guideline has been working for the last couple of years under what our Honorable Prime Minister launched, the Universal Accessible campaign in the year 2015, which had 3 components. One was the built environment, other was mobility, and the third was the technology, that is IT, or information technology. But after that, with the help of, I would like to thank FCDO, His Excellency High Commissioner of UK is very much there. I could see him on the screen. I would like to thank him and his team for giving assistance and working with us in bringing this fantastic guidelines. Right from the page, cover page, you see the 9 colors. It speaks of pluralities. We all go through the different stages. Few are born Divyang, the great word coined by our Honorable Prime Minister. They are the people born with the organs which are Divya, which are divine, because they get excess additional powers, which unless and until we realize that, we cannot mainstream, we cannot make the best use of that. So for this Divyangjan, this is few are from the birth, but many of us go through the life stages. And at certain point of time in our life, we have some disability, maybe because of health reasons. Maybe a lady going through this pregnancy or serious health reasons, childhood. There are various kinds of things which requires extra attention, extra care for your security, for your safety, for you to do your best, to deliver your best. You have all the capabilities, but you are kind of guarded by certain things. So what is that we can create in the environment so that you are able to do your best? And that is why in this guidelines, this is not called only for few persons, but this is universal accessibility. It's a harmonized guidelines and standards for universal accessibility. Everybody, child, women, men, of all ages, of all kinds of things, if you have any kinds of some differential ability, you should not feel inaccessible. You should feel access to whatever you want to do, you should do your best in all kinds of environment. This guideline, thanks to Professor Raheja, I don't know, sometimes he must have taken it very unkindly when I was harsh on some of the presentations, and I really wanted to make it very, very lucid and user-friendly so that anybody can understand it. Thanks to you, Professor Raheja, that you complied with all my requirements. Whatever I said, you are doing it. You're doing much more than I was asking for X, you are doing it X square. So that's the IIT spirit. So this has really come up very well. My request would be, this is now from today. It's a very important day. Tomorrow we have the World Day of Disability. The whole world will be celebrating, and we are going with this book, with this whole treatise on what is to be done in the built environment. You can make a good meal, but you have to make the best use of the meal. You have to do the justice to the meal. Then only those who have prepared the meal, they will feel happy about it. The great work has been done. Now it is for all others. I request all the states, all urban local bodies, all local bodies, in their developmental program, in all their work. Why only the government bodies, even private? Whatever constructions you are doing, please be sensitive to the needs of accessibility. Please be sensitive to the needs of dignity of the people. People should not feel, I'm not being cared for. I think I was hearing to some of the comments. One of our friend from the screen, she was mentioning that it is not the disability, but the environment of disability which makes them much more scared. So you have to create that kind of environment, and that kind of environment is possible. It's a lot of work, a lot of thinking has gone into making this book, and this needs to be used very skillfully. Now the country is completely changing. It is our Honorable Prime Minister's vision. The way he coined the word Divyangjan, Divyang, and the kind of action which has been done across the country. tremendous. Let me tell you, all our government buildings, 100%, all the central government buildings are accessible today, whether it is in Delhi or it is outside. We have done it. As CPWD, it's a Central Public Works Department under my ministry. They were trained. They developed such people who can do the audit, and all the requirements at different places, they have all been taken care of. And this is the movement. Now the new buildings are coming, new spaces, public spaces are coming, and they also are quite sensitive to that. This book is going to be of a great use to them. I didn't have time to go through the other book when I speak about this book, because I've been so much deeply engrossed in this book. The other book on the inclusive city framework, since I'm not much, I can't comment, but definitely coming from IIT Kharagpur, my respect to this, all this, the work which has been done, will be of very great use. The cities are changing. Cities are becoming smart. And smartness comes from making the city inclusive, making everybody contribute towards the betterment of the city in whatever form. Whatever form. I mean, it could be for improving your social life, community life, individual life, bringing simplicity, making ease in doing things. I'm sure this book must have addressed those issues. After this, I'll have the occasion to go through that. I really feel very privileged today to be here and release these two important documents, prepared not only by these two professors, but the whole lot of community. I mean, I think the stakeholders have taken a lot of interest in this, in preparing this book, and they will all have access to this. My appeal to everybody, because now the earlier book gets superseded by this book. This becomes our ministry's standards and the guidelines for the making India accessible and achieving the dream of Honorable Prime Minister, an accessible Sugamya Bharat. It's a completely accessible India for everybody. Everybody gets an opportunity to do their best in the environment which is given to them, whether it is the school, whether it is work environment, whether it is the home environment, your social environment, everywhere you get the best, so that you feel dignified, you feel completely wanted, and you do your best. So thanks a lot, Hitesh Vaidyaji, for calling me for this occasion, and the two professors and the team for giving me this opportunity to release the book. I wish you all the very best. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words and constant support to NIUA. And hearty congratulations to the team from the Ministry, IIT Roorkee, IIT Kharagpur, and NIUA for the launch of these amazing documents. We are honored to have your support today in this discourse towards mainstreaming inclusive urban futures. Moving forward, we are fortunate enough to have His Excellency Mr. Alex Ellis, who is the UK's High Commissioner at the British High Commission India. He's joining us virtually today. An integral part of the journey so far has been the unwavering support from our colleagues at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office for pushing the boundaries to mainstream disability inclusion at all levels. And to talk us through it, may I please request Mr. Alex Ellis to kindly share his thoughts on the subject. Mr. Ellis has earlier held several esteemed positions across the globe, including in Portugal, Brazil, and with the European Union. Over to you, Mr. Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very sorry I'm not there. I should be there. But anyway, I'm here. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to say a few words, really on behalf of my colleagues who've done so much work, particularly Harpreet, who I think is there, and others to make this this work happen. So, Honourable Chief Secretary, in particular, it's a great pleasure to follow you, sir, and many thanks also to the IIT professors and all those within the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. India is pretty clear, I think. I mean, you're the experts, but there'll be hundreds of millions of people moving into urban environments over the next generation. and of those hundreds of million, let's say millions, will be disabled or elderly or have access issues of one sort or another. And that is a big challenge. Probably, I guess, it's the biggest urbanization that will happen anywhere in the world over the coming decades. So what happens in India is going to affect, obviously, every person in India, but also the rest of the world in the way it's done. So it's a big challenge. And I think that it matters a lot. I think that built environments tell a great deal about the culture of the environment in which those buildings exist. We heard at the beginning about the quotes from Gandhiji and so forth, the idea of inclusion, and India being an inherently inclusive country. And that is, I think, one of, if you commit an outsider commenting, one of India's great strengths is its strength of inclusion. And a building tells you rather immediately, are you included or not? And that is essential for public buildings. That's why, if I may say, I will just congratulate the Secretary and all those who've done work to make the public buildings of India inclusive and accessible, because it means they should be for every person in India, and it's great to hear that they are. It also matters for privately owned buildings as well, and that's why it's great to have these standards which we're launching today, because you want to show your culture through the environment which you are building for the next generation. I guess if you're going to deal with this huge challenge, what do you need? You need vision. And I think we heard it from the Secretary in relation to Prime Minister Modiji's vision of Debunking, if I pronounced that correctly, and the sense of, there is a vision for what India should be in terms of inclusion. Secondly, you need law, and India has that. I think it's the 2016 Disability Act, and you need a legal basis in which to act. You then need ideas, and you need thought, and it's wonderful that the IITs and no doubt many others have been contributing to this, to the thinking, and then you need will. You need the will to actually implement the law, and that, of course, I guess will be the kind of next test. How do we take these standards and turn them into reality? The British government has long been a partner of the government of India in urban development. I think back over 40 years worth of work done together. Over time, that support has shifted. At the beginning, I think it was mainly about slums. This was back in the early 80s. But as India has developed, so our work has changed. We're kind of working in cities, and now I think today we're working on standards and on technical assistance, and that feels like the right kind of partnership between the UK and India. And I'm delighted that we have been part of working with you all the way along, and it's really important that we provide that support. And I guess the future we hope is described in these documents and in these standards. But wouldn't it be great if the next step of the UK-India partnership in urban development would be not just UK working with India in India, but the UK and India working together in other parts of the world, where I think together we can have great impact as other countries go through the very rapid urbanization which India has been going through and is going through and will go through in the future. So maybe that's a thought for the future. It's great we're doing this today before World Disabilities Day. My son is on the autistic spectrum, or disabled, I guess would be categorized as such. So it's a particularly personal issue for me, and it's a sensitive issue when I think about what urban environments work for him and what don't. I can only give one good example of where it does, coming from my own country. Football is big in this country, not as big as cricket, but I am a very strong supporter of the Arsenal Football Club. And one of the great things about the Arsenal Football Club is when they built their new stadia a decade ago, they built it including a sensory room to enable children, like my son was, who would find it quite overwhelming being in a football stadium, just to be part of the experience, but in a way which was more welcoming to him. So if the Arsenal Football Club can do it, then I think we can all do it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, sir, and we are grateful for this collaboration. Moving forward, BASIC, in collaboration with NOSPLAN, which is the National Organization of Students of Planning, organized the Design It Accessible Challenge for all students of planning institutions across the country as part of NOSPLAN's annual event in 2021. 18 different teams from prestigious colleges in India participated in the competition. Today, we would like to felicitate the winners of the competition and encourage them to imbibe inclusion as the principle for their professional career. May I request Secretary Sir to kindly hand over the mementos to the winning team members. May I request the winner to come to the dais one by one. First prize winners from SPA Delhi, Anupriya Agarwal and Ishita Saraswat. Second prize winners from SPA Vijayawada, receiving on their behalf Mr. Abhishek Luke, Vice President of NOSPLAN. The third prize winner from SPA Delhi, Manya Katyal. Thank you so much, sir, for doing the honors. I would now like to invite my colleague Tanika Bansal to kindly give the vote of thanks and close the inaugural session.
Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me an immense pleasure to give the vote of thanks to all the dignitaries assembled here. But before starting the vote of thanks, I would like to request our director Hitesh sir to present a vote of to present a token of gratitude to Secretary sir for giving us his time and encouragement. Sir, to JS sir, please. And we thank you also, sir, for all of your encouragement and support throughout. To Professor Raheja, to Professor Chattopadhyay, I would now like to request Utsav to kindly give a token of gratitude to Director Sir for all of his support and encouragement. I would like to specially thank Secretary Sir Shri Durga Shankar Mishra ji for taking out time from his extremely busy schedule despite of his commitments and joining us today for the launch and inaugural session. You have been an inspiration to all of us, sir, and your visionary ideas and philosophy have been a guide for our work in mainstreaming disability inclusion to transform India's urban future. I would also like to thank Shri Ved Prakash ji, JS Works, for joining us today. Sir, your role in the revision of harmonized guidelines has been pivotal. We thank you for your support in gracing the event with your presence. I also like to thank Mr. Alex Ellis, High Commissioner, British High Commissioner, India, for taking out time and joining us for the session. I extend my gratitude to Professor Gaurav Raheja for taking us through the ideation behind the harmonized guidelines process. The partnership with IIT Roorkee and IIT Kharagpur has indeed been really fruitful for NIUA. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our director, Shri Hitesh Vaidyaji, for his constant support and guidance throughout the program duration, as well as in making this event a success. Thank you everyone for joining the inaugural session.
cannot stay stuck. Please don't. Not my time.
Thank you so much. Most appreciated. Right from the first voice, you are so sweet.
Thank you so much. Very kind.
Without you,
Giving compliments to Untitled.
उत्सव के साथ उसने भी नहीं खाया बोल देना टीम साइड डायरी में Thank you, everyone. After this overwhelming session, I'm sure we would all appreciate a small break. Tea and coffee is arranged in the lobby outside. We all will convene back in exactly 15 minutes. Thank you.